Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network's YouTube channel. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can find us on Facebook and stay up to date on our Facebook group, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at consciousradionetwork.com for podcasts, hosts, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Networks. Wow, I almost got lost there. Whoa. It's been an interesting day. To the series, The Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. If this is your first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Today, this is part 3 of Septemics, a philosophical science. And back with us today, Jim Marshall, a human development engineer. And we will pick up, like I said, part 3. We are continuation as a course or an instruction in the scales. So we are continuing on. If you do have the book, or if you don't have, let's start with, if you don't have the book yet, go to septemics.com and pick up the book. And if you already have it, we are starting today with our instruction of the scales on chapter 4. Welcome back, Jim. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Paul. I'm doing great. How about you?
Awesome. I am doing wonderful, wonderful weather, and another wonderful time of instruction on picking up on the scale of permeation, chapter 4. So for those who have got their book again, or haven't got it, go get it, and then come back to this and watch it if you have any other questions. So let's dive into this on slide 2. Go here. Come on, there we go. Chapter 4, scale of permeation. Let's start here today.
Okay, well, permeate means to pervade or to go through, to occupy the same space as. Permeation is the basic action of a spiritual being. The reason you get sensation from your body is because you're permeating it.
Mm.
When you die, you stop permeating it, so you no longer get sensation from it. And this tells you quite a bit about the act of dying or the act of killing somebody, because if you cause an effect on the body that's traumatic, the person has a tendency to just leave because she doesn't want to be there. So permeation is present when you have love. Permeation monitors love. Love is an outgrowth or a consequence of permeation. So permeation is upscale, or you might say above love. Love is one step down from permeation. So when two people love one another, they're permeating one another. And when two people hate one another, they're not permeating one another. That's a binary way of looking at it, but this is a 7-level scale. So we'll go through the 7 possibilities. First of all, this is a spiral scale, which means that there is an apparent congruence between level 1 and level 7. Level 1 is must permeate, level 7 is must permeate. Level 1 is complete permeation. And they sort of look the same if you're not paying close attention. Must permeate is compulsive. A person must permeate something. So this is like a nutty guy who has pictures of some particular woman all over his apartment.
Yeah.
Right? He's like fixated on her. He's not really permeating her, but he must permeate her. So this is a type of mental illness. And that can be easily confused with complete permeation, because when you have complete permeation, obviously permeation is going on. You can see the permeation if you pay attention. And so you can mistake 1 and 7. And on all of the spiral scales, this is a danger in determining what level someone is at. You have to be careful not to mistake 1 for 7 on a spiral scale.
Yeah.
This is a quantum scale, meaning between the levels, there's no intervening gradation. So you're either at level 1 or you're at level 2. There's nothing in between. Now, on gradual scales, there is an infinitude of gradations between any two levels. So you move up to a level or down to a level gradually. That is not the case here. On all quantum scales, you jump instantaneously from one level to the next. And this is something that you can observe. For example, if a person is in therapy, he's having trouble with his marriage. He goes to therapy for 9 months, and one day he says, I don't have any trouble with my marriage. It's great. Well, what happened? This did not happen just because of that one session. He was working on this, but there was an instant in which, poof, he suddenly went to another level.
Yeah.
So that's how quantum scales work. It's a little counterintuitive because people sort of expect things to go gradually, and in this subject, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. Now, this is a specific scale, meaning this has no general meaning. It has a context. So you can say, well, how am I permeating my wife? How am I permeating my business? How am I permeating my club or whatever? So you could be at different levels for different contexts. So the next thing you want to notice about this is under the word direction, it says plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. And as I've explained many times, it doesn't mean good or bad. It doesn't mean add or subtract. It means inflow or outflow, or to put it in a more humanistic way, reach and withdraw.
Yeah.
You see, on a physical science level, you would say inflow, outflow, like the water in a pipe. It flows in and then it flows out. On a human level, perhaps you might want to call it a psychological level, it makes more sense to say reach and withdraw. When a human being reaches for something, that's an outflow. And when a human being withdraws from something, that's an inflow. And that is why this is a quantum scale. You see, in order to go from level 2 to level 1, you must reverse polarity. This is a big deal. This is not something that happens every 15 minutes. This involves a major change in the person in that context. So, any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So now let's look at these. So we'll start at 7. So must permeate is an outflow. If you've ever seen somebody who's compulsive, it's clearly an outflow. He's not withdrawn. He's outflowing into the area in which he is compulsive. See, he must permeate it. That's an outflow. Now, when you go up to 6, unable to permeate, well, whenever you are unable to, that's a withdrawal. That person is succumbing. He's not compulsive anymore. He's simply succumbing. He says, I can't deal with this. That's not as crazy as 7, where you become compulsive.
Yeah.
Then you go up to 5, able to permeate. Well, able to permeate is an outflow. You see, you are able to outflow in this area. So you have to realize able to permeate doesn't mean you are permeating. It just means you're able to permeate. Now, normal people sort of expect this as sort of a ridiculous minimum. In other words, when you're dealing with normal people, you don't really expect somebody to be not able to permeate something at all. So, for example, if somebody comes to your house and you have artwork and you show them your artwork, you say, "And yes, this is something from Rubens," and you sort of expect them to be able to permeate that.
Yeah.
See, that's now able to permeate is indifference. You're saying, "Well, I could permeate this, but I'm not permeating it. I'm just able to permeate it." So that's an outflow or a reach. So up from that, level 4 is unwilling to permeate. Now, unwilling to permeate is antipathy. So, for example, you have Democrats who are unwilling to permeate Republicans, and Republicans who are unwilling to permeate Democrats. There is antipathy between them. I'm not saying all of them are like that, but some of them are like that. This is where they are in that particular scale. So, like in the context of politics, a person who doesn't want to is not willing to permeate somebody of the opposing party, he has an antipathy toward that person. Okay, antipathy means literally feeling against.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a withdrawal. See, you're withdrawing into yourself. You say, "Oh no, I'm not going to go there." Up from that is willing to permeate. Now, this is what we see in normal, well-adjusted people. They're willing to permeate. You say to somebody, "Oh, look at my garden. I just had my new flowers put in." You say, "Oh, really? You have some empathy for the flowers." That's an outflow. Okay, willing to permeate is an outflow. It doesn't mean you're permeating, but you're willing to permeate it, which is the opposite of 5. Pardon me. It's the opposite of 4, which is unwilling to permeate. Now let's go to 2. 2 is can permeate at will. This is the anatomy of success. When you see success, you see somebody who can permeate this area at will. So you take some great baseball player in the major leagues. He's successful. Now, he can permeate that game at will. Now, this is an inflow. In other words, he's sort of saying, "I can inhale this thing anytime I want."
Yeah.
You see, that is what you see in a successful person. And up from that is complete permeation, which is power. Now, when I say power, some people get that confused with domination. Actually, power and domination are opposites. When you are domineering, it's because you lack power. When you have power, you don't have to dominate.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, you permeate. So, a good example of this is the power of the Beatles over the pop music world. In their heyday during Beatlemania, there were 2 different times when Beatles songs were number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the best-selling records list at the same time.
Wow.
So the best-selling record, the top 5 were all Beatle records. That happened twice. Okay? That's power. And John Lennon reflected this when he said, "We had a license to kill."
Yeah.
So by the time they got to, when they decided, "We're not touring anymore, this is a circus, we're just going to record," and they changed the whole future of rock music. In fact, they changed the whole future of pop music. I mean, you could see it in when Rubber Soul came out, it was like, "Wow, what's this?"
Yeah.
And by the time they got to Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, people were raving. This was a revolution in music. Nobody had ever done anything like this before. So they had complete permeation, which is to say they had this huge outflow into the world. They were not withheld in the slightest from the music world and their fans and media and everything else. So that's the scale of permeation.
Wow.
Now, people who do not acknowledge the existence of a spiritual being are probably going to have trouble understanding this,
Mm-hmm.
because permeation is a spiritual activity.
Yeah.
So this is why sometimes you'll see somebody who's perhaps not too smart, perhaps not too well educated, perhaps not too talented, et cetera, but he does very well because he permeates.
Mm.
You know, he does not withhold himself from the context.
Right.
And so he has power over it because he permeates it. It's like showering it with love.
Now, what is the difference between 5 and 3? Able to permeate and willing to permeate. The
Okay.
indifference over the empathy, since
Okay.
they almost feel the same.
Yes. Well, here's the difference. Able to permeate simply means you have moved above unable to permeate,
Mm-hmm.
right? You go from unable to permeate up to able to permeate. So you're not succumbing anymore. You're just indifferent. Whereas willing to permeate, that's empathy.
Yeah.
See, able to permeate doesn't mean you have empathy. You haven't, it's not like you're really willing to do it. You're just able to do it.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So this is like the difference between, let's say, a guy at 5 is like a guy with 2 broken legs, right? He can't walk.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas 3 is a guy, his legs are fine. If he wants to sprint, he can sprint. You know, it's a big difference. Now, what you are perceiving here is the fact that these are harmonics.
Okay. Yeah.
So in any of these scales where you have plus, minus, all of the pluses are harmonics. So 5 is an upper harmonic of 7, 3 is an upper harmonic of 5, 1 is an upper harmonic of 3. And it's the same with 2, 4, and 6.
Yeah.
They're harmonics. So the plus and the minus sort of create that sort of tells you, okay, that's how and why these are harmonics.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tend not to go into the harmonics too much because some people don't know what harmonics are,
Mhm.
although I do explain it in the book.
All right. And get the book, everybody. It'll be a lot easier to understand, definitely. Absolutely. Ready for the next slide?
Ready?
All right.
Okay, the scale of thought. There are 7 levels of human thought. Most people don't have this concept. They sort of have the concept that this guy is smart and this guy is dopey,
Yeah.
which is a generality. But there are actually 7 different types of human thought. So first of all, this is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between level 1 and 7. This is a quantum scale, which means there's no gradation between levels. Okay, so you skip instantaneously from 1 to 2, meaning it's not a quantitative difference, it's a qualitative difference. So if you're at 2, duplicate, that is qualitatively different from being at 3, which is differentiate. That is why it's a quantum scale. Now, this is a specific scale. Most of the scales are specific, which means it has a context. This has no general meaning. You have to put this into a context. What is this guy's thinking regarding his family? What is his thinking regarding his religion? What is his thinking regarding his political party? And so forth. And of course, with the specific scales, there's no limit to how many ways you can use this. So all of these specific scales are very useful. Each one is like a toolkit. And every time you get into a context with this, you open up this toolkit and it helps you to analyze it. Now let's look at the dotted vertical line on the right. This is the axis, and it tells you what we are measuring here. So if we have 7 levels, you can reasonably say 7 levels of what? If you look at a ruler, a yardstick, right, has numbers on it. It doesn't tell you it, but in most of the English speaking countries, it's measuring inches. So that's a standard. So what is it a standard of here? What are these 7 levels measuring? Okay, so they're measuring permeation and knowledge. So at the top of the scale, meaning above level 1, at this unattainable pinnacle, you have total permeation and knowledge. At the bottom, below level 7, in the depths of ignorance, is no permeation or knowledge. So, as a person's permeation and knowledge improve, he goes up the scale. And as they deteriorate, he goes down the scale. That's what this is measuring. Now let's look at the horizontal line next to 4, where it separates sane from insane. This is a feature of many scales. So basically what that's saying is, if you are at level 5, 6, or 7, your thought is insane. And as you go further down, it's more insane. If you're at level 1, 2, or 3, your thinking is sane, more so as you go up. If you're at level 4, it's sort of what you might call a neutrality or an equilibrium. It's not really sane or insane. So let's look at these 7 levels, starting at 7. So deny. Deny means ignore. So you have a guy, every night he drinks a quart of scotch, he passes out on the couch. Next day he goes up and goes to work. Now, if you know this guy, you might say to him, because you know he's been doing this for 5 years, you say to him, Joe, do you think maybe you're an alcoholic, right? And he says, oh, no, I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I have a job. I pay my rent. He's in denial. So he's ignoring something that actually exists. That is what denial is. Okay? That is the lowest level of thought. So this is actually a little bit daffy if you really think about this. So there's something that's there, and you're saying it's not there. That's different from simply not being aware of something. You follow me?
Yeah.
If a person's simply not aware, like there might be somebody who's, like there's people in the world who have no idea that what's going on in American baseball right now, right? We're at the late part of the season where championships are won. They have no idea about that. So that's not denial. They just don't know. Okay. Now, up from that is 6, which is disassociate. Excuse me. Disassociate is rejection. When you reject something, you're disassociating from it. You're saying, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So this is like, it is estimated that there were 4 million people in America who did not vote for Mitt Romney because he's a Mormon. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because if you go back and study the history of Mormonism, there was violence. Many people on both sides were killed in the fight between the Mormons and everybody else. So these people have descendants who remember this. And also, the business about they used to have long ago polygamy.
Yeah.
Well, to some people, that's a very bad thing. There are societies in which that is completely accepted. So I guess to those people, it's not a bad thing. But anyway, the point is that, so they just rejected him. No, I'm not voting for him. Okay? So you just disassociate yourself from that thing. Not going to have anything to do with that. So that's what disassociate is. That is a level of thought. It is a sort of stimulus response. reaction. You got hit the guy in the knee with the hammer and the foot moves.
Yeah.
It's that type of a thing. Yeah, reject. You just reject it.
Yeah.
So you can't say there's no thought there, but deep down underneath this, there is some kind of thought, and it's dissociative thought.
Hmm.
Now, this is daffy, but it's not as daffy as 7. Up from that is identify. Identify means equating. I actually know somebody who said to me many times, all men are beasts. Okay, that's identifying. This person is identifying every man with every other man, or you might say equating every man with every other man. So clearly, any rational person is going to say, well, not all men are beasts. Clearly, that is not true to any rational person. Okay,
Yeah.
but that is what I mean when I say identify. This is like the person who says, all Jews are cheap.
Mm.
Maybe there are some Jews that are cheap. I don't know. But anyway, it's identification.
Yeah.
Okay. And you see this all over the society. It's like people who say all whites are racists.
Yeah.
Okay. They're identifying all whites with all other whites.
Is this
You know,
something? Is this something equal to like judgment?
well, there's certainly judgment embedded in all of these levels, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
But the very specific manifestation is identify. So,
Yeah.
for example, most of the people who voted for Obama for president were white people.
Hmm.
That is a fact.
Wow.
So now it's true that overwhelming majorities of blacks voted for him, as one might expect. But still, most of the people who voted for him are whites because there's a lot more. So you're
Yeah.
going to say all those people are racists? What sense does that make?
Yeah.
You know?
Huh.
So that's identify. Now, up from that, you get to what we generally think of as normal human thought, which is associate. Associate means compare. So it's like one guy is walking his dog and he passes another guy on the street who's walking his dog, right? So they have a little conversation. Oh, I see you have an Alsatian. Yes. What is yours? Oh, mine's a mixed breed. Okay. See, they're comparing.
Yeah.
That's association. So I see a guy with a Yankee hat on. I say, "Oh, you must be a Yankee fan." Yeah, I used to be a Yankee fan when I lived in New York. You see, you're
Mm.
associating. That's
Yeah.
like normal human behavior. That is not insane, and it's not particularly sane. It's just sort of neutral. It's what you
Yeah.
get from normal people most of the time.
Yeah. Huh.
Okay. Then up from that is differentiate. Now, differentiate means analyze. This is the person who is smarter than merely associating. He can differentiate things, meaning he can analyze it. So if you talk to a very smart person, he will differentiate. In other words, he will analyze it. So there's sort of a cliche amongst many people. It's prominent in the science community, but it exists elsewhere too. When somebody says, "Do you believe in God?" and they say, "Which God do you mean?"
Mm.
Because there are hundreds and hundreds of different gods,
Yeah.
right? That person is analyzing it. He's differentiating. Or he could even say, "Well, do you mean the God of the Old Testament or the God of the New Testament?" They're represented very differently if you read those documents.
Yeah.
You see? So that's differentiation. So this is what scientists do, mathematicians, engineers, anybody who's in that type of field. Lawyers do this. You have to differentiate. And that's what that level is at. It's a different type of thought. Up from that is duplicate. Duplicate is learning. Most people apparently do not understand that learning is a process of duplication.
Mhm.
You learn by duplicating. Okay, so you show this 5-year-old kid a 3, and then you show him 3 crayons. And you say 3, 3, and you point. See? He's duplicating this concept of 3 from the 3 crayons to this symbol.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what teaching and learning is about. When you're teaching, you're getting people to duplicate. And in case you haven't noticed, most people have difficulty learning. So much so that when you have somebody who doesn't have difficulty learning, everybody is oohing and eyeing. Oh, my son has gotten straight A's for 7 years in a row, you know?
Yeah.
That person stands out. The kid's just duplicating. So it's a type of thought. So until you get to level 2, you can't really learn. That is the problem with learning. You have to get the person to duplicate
Yeah.
whatever it is. So somebody who's a quick student can just watch somebody do something and go right home and do it himself. He duplicated it. Okay? That's what learning is. Then we go up to the highest level of thought, which is creative thought. And many people describe this as inspiration. So when you see a great artist, he's creative. That's easy to understand. But let's take it out of the artistry. Let's look at Einstein's theories of relativity. In order for him to figure those out, he had to have creative thought.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. In the whole history of the world, nobody ever figured that out before he did. He literally created it. He created the theory of relativity. So you would have to say there's inspiration there, right? Where did this come from? You know, did you ever hear the cliche Newton's apple?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the inspiration. Newton saw the apple drop and he saw, wait a minute, this is the same force that holds the moon around the earth. See, that was how he got the 3 laws of motion, that insight. So he was inspired by that moment. So that's what you see in great musicians. They are creating it as they're doing it in the moment. And I can tell you a little anecdote. I had a friend, now deceased, who was a famous jazz musician, and he invited me to his house on a Sunday afternoon with a bunch of people. You know, so we're all sitting around with beer and chili and whatever. And he had a grand piano in his living room. So he comes out, didn't say anything, had a cigarette in his mouth, sat down at the piano, and just played for 20 minutes.
Wow.
No music, no requests, didn't say a word. There was no pause. He just played for through all of these different permeations and computations of melodies and harmonies for 20 minutes, right? So I could see that, wow, this is inspired, you know? This is creative. He
Yeah.
was just making it up as he went along. And it was spectacular. And I had the good fortune of knowing several musicians like that. So that's what the scale is about.
Hmm.
Any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Let's go. Next one. Scale of identity.
Yes. So identity comes from the Latin word idem, which means same. It's a Latin adjective. So anytime a person has an identity, he's saying he's the same as something else. Now, this is a spiral scale. If you look at level 1, it says no identity. And if you look at level 7, it also says no identity. However, at level 7, it's no possible identity. And at level 1, it's no need for an identity. These are drastically different states. You see, no need for an identity is what extroversion is. When a person is completely extroverted, he's not even thinking about himself. That's why he has no need for an identity. In other words, he's not saying, I'm the same as this. He's not saying he's the same as anything. He's just whatever he is, and he's looking at what's there. That's the top of the scale. The bottom of the scale is oblivion. This person doesn't have a clue what's going on. He doesn't even know that he doesn't know what's going on. Now let's look at the axis, the vertical dotted line on the right. So at level 1, you have maximal perception. Okay, I'm not saying it's infinite perception, but it's maximal. And at level 7, you have no perception. So that's what oblivion means. When we say he's oblivious, it means he has no perception. Okay, now a person who's extroverted has maximal perception. He can perceive very well, which is why he's extroverted. Or you can say he's extroverted because he perceives very well.
Yeah.
That's what we're measuring in this scale. This is not obvious at all when you talk to people about identity. It's about perception. The more perception you have, the higher you are on this scale. So as a person deteriorates in this scale, his perception deteriorates. That's why he goes down the scale. Now let's look at direction. Again, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus. So we have inflow, outflow. So no need for an identity is an inflow. In other words, this person is withdrawn from whatever it is. See, he's just being in his self. He's not reaching out to this thing, whatever it is. Whereas the person at 2, certain of identity, oh boy, is he reaching. He's reaching with both hands. That's why he's certain. You see?
Yeah.
So that's how this works as far as plus, minus, plus, minus. Now, again, this is a quantum scale. There's no intervening gradation between any of the levels. You jump instantaneously from level to level. And usually this happens if you're going upscale by a realization. You say, I don't need to have an identity. I can just be myself, you see? And you go from 2 to 1. It's instantaneous. There's no gradation. And it's a specific scale, meaning this has a context. It has no general meaning. So you could say, well, what's the guy's identity in his family? What's his identity in his workplace? What's his identity in his club? And so forth. Now, notice it says there, this scale aligns with the scale of allegiance. Now, identity is an intrinsically solipsistic state. Or perhaps I might say, you do this by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas allegiance always involves somebody else, whether it's allegiance to one other person or allegiance to a whole country. It involves other people. So the scale of allegiance is a group scale. The scale of identity is an individual scale. So there are several pairs like this of scales which have an individual manifestation and then a group manifestation of the same phenomena. So if you study these 2 scales side by side, you'll see you're basically talking about the same thing. The difference is a scale of identity is something that happens within your mind, whereas a scale of allegiance that necessarily involves other people.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go through these. So if a person, let's start at level 1 in this case, because everyone enters this scale at level 1. There's no other possibility. You come into some area you know nothing about, right? You have no need for it. Let's say the Shriners, right?
Yeah.
Shriners is organization, right? That got,
Hmm.
I don't know, millions of people. So you don't know anything about the Shriners. Shriners, what's that? Okay? You have no need for an identity as a Shriner. You're not a Shriner. You never heard of them. You don't know any of them. So you're just extroverted. You're just saying, "Oh, I see. There's this group of people called Shriners." Okay, why do they wear funny hats? So that's it. Now, if you then become involved with the Shriners, at some point you might become certain of your identity as a Shriner. You put on the little hat. And now, instead of being withdrawn from them, which is what the minus sign means, you're outflowing into them, which
Yeah.
is what the plus sign means. You're saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm certain of my identity. I'm a Shriner." You see? Now, this says contrition. Why does it say contrition? People like this are contrite. These people will give you money, they will donate their time to you. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a guy, he's a dyed in the wool Democrat, right? You
Hmm.
say, "Are you a Democrat?" "Oh, yes, I've always been a Democrat. I will always be." See, he's as certain of his identity.
Yeah.
He gives them money, he gives them his vote, he volunteers for them. See, so that's what you get from a contrite person. See, like when the husband upsets the wife, right? He shows up with a dozen long stem roses and he says, "Honey, I'm sorry." That's a state of contrition. In order for him to do that, he has to be certain of his identity as this wife's husband.
Yeah.
You see? If he were not sure, he wouldn't do that. That is why this is where contrition fits in. Then you go down to the next level and you become uncertain of identity. All right, so let's continue this analogy. So this guy, right, when he married the woman, he said, "Love, honor, and obey till death do us part," right? So now 5 years later, he's not so sure. He
Mm.
says, "Maybe I made a mistake here." See, he's indecisive. So he's uncertain of his identity. Gee, am I really the right person for this woman? Or is she really the right woman for me? However he articulates it. So
Yeah.
he's uncertain of his identity. That is a withdrawal. He has withdrawn from her. You see?
Yeah.
Now, if this relationship continues to deteriorate, he goes down into a wrong identity. So, what does he do? He cheats on his wife, right? He is now in the identity of a philanderer,
Mm.
a Lothario, whatever you want to call it, right? That's enmity. From the viewpoint of the wife, he has become an enemy now.
Yeah.
Okay? So that is a wrong identity. This is an outflow. When a person goes into the state, he actually does things. This guy goes down to the bar in his best suit and says, "Beautiful, where have you been all my life?"
Yeah.
So that's an outflow. Now, if this guy continues to deteriorate, he goes into lost identity. He loses his identity. He's not Jane's wife who's cheating on Jane. He's not the husband at all. You see, he lost the identity.
Mm.
That is betrayal. Now, this is easy to understand in a historical context because, for example, the Geneva Convention requires combatant nations to take care of the soldiers they capture. They are required by the Geneva Convention to give them adequate food, medical care, shelter, clothing, and so forth. Okay? These people are enemies, level 4.
Yeah.
But If you are a traitor, you get shot or hanged or worse. Okay? And we're talking about 6,000 years of history of this. So, betray is a doublet of the word traitor. So, a traitor is somebody who lost his identity. He no longer has the identity. And you see, this is a withdrawal. He is withdrawn into himself. Traitors are people who slink around. They're not going around outwardly saying, I'm here and I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who ever heard of a double agent who's obvious?
Yeah.
Okay. So then if he goes below that, now you really getting into ding ding, here comes the wagon. Because below betrayal is disorientation. When a person goes below betrayal, he's disoriented. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. In other words, he manifests chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see this in the person. His house is a mess. His car is a mess. His person is a mess. His life is a mess. He's a mess. The chaos is real. It's an outflow. Okay? He's not inflowing anymore. He's just gone into a state of chaos. This is the type of person who throws chairs around the room because he flies into a rage.
Yeah.
He's disoriented. So, this is somebody who is probably diagnosably mentally ill. Now, when you go below that, you go into oblivion. No possible identity. So this is like a catatonic sitting in a mental ward, right? He just sits there. He doesn't do anything. You talk to him, he doesn't respond. He's oblivious, right? He doesn't perceive you. He doesn't hear what you say. You say to him, hello, Joe, I'm very glad to see you. This might be your brother. I'm very glad to see you, Joe. How are you? Right? No perception. He just stares at the wall. Okay? Now, I'm not saying all these people are in insane asylums, which is unfortunate because that's where they belong.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of them just walking around. So you can say to this guy, who are you voting for in the election? He says, what election? He doesn't know there's an election going on. He's oblivious.
Yeah.
Now, if he were one level up, he wouldn't be able to give you a straight answer because he's disoriented. So that's how this works, the scale of identity. Now, I want to clarify, as with most of the scales, if not all, the average reader has some difficulty grasping the extremes of the scales. Many readers, a large majority of them, have difficulty grasping levels 1 and 7 because it's sort of outside of their experience.
Yeah.
They have never actually seen this. So it's sort of news to them that this state can exist.
Yeah.
But if you're involved in helping people, as I was for most of my adult life, I saw all of these things. So that's how I found this material. I observed this. There it is, it's sitting right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wrote it down. And, after a while, I started seeing they were scales and that they were just natural law. And that's how this came about. Any questions?
No. This is good. I like this. Wow. How about we do one more scale for the day?
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Go to the next one, which is
Okay, scale of evaluation. This is an extremely volatile scale, meaning people move on this quickly and easily. Some of the scales are hard to move on, and some of the scales are easy to move on. For example, the scale of basic purposes, most people, and I'm talking about more than 90%, spend their entire lifetime at one level of that scale. In other words, there is no movement. That is not to say that it's impossible. It just doesn't happen to them. This scale, this moves by minutes or hours.
Yeah.
So let me just give you an example right away to tell you how this works. So let's say you have some guy from rural Africa, doesn't know anything about baseball, never heard of it, never saw it, right? Never heard of Babe Ruth. So he comes to visit you, and you say, we're all going to a baseball game. Why don't you come along with us? He says, okay. Right? He has no idea what he's going to see.
Yeah.
He's at 4, neutrality. Everybody enters this scale at 4, neutrality. So when you come to a new context, you're neutral. This guy has no opinion about baseball. He's never seen it, right? So you take him to the baseball game. Now, what's going to happen is, in a matter of minutes, you can observe that he's either going to up or down. He's either going to say, like 15 minutes into the game, you say to him, so tell me, how do you like this? What do you think of this? And he might say, I think I like this. This is interesting. I can see why people would come to watch this. See, he's gone from neutrality up to 3, acceptance.
Yeah.
Or he might say, why would anybody want to watch this? You see, he's gone down to 5.
Mm-hmm.
This is in minutes, okay? Now, if he continues to go down, he'll eventually get to condemnation. And if he continues to go up, he'll eventually get to encouragement. So that's sort of how this works. Now, this is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between level and 1 and 7, which makes it very easy. This is a gradual scale, which makes it very intuitive. You go gradually from level to level. So there's a little of acceptance, a little more acceptance, a little more acceptance. And at some point, there's enough acceptance that you get to unanimity, which is 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a specific scale, meaning this can apply to all kinds of things. It has no general meaning. So, where is he on the scale of evaluation as regards Hitchcock movies? Where is he on the scale of evaluation as regards Western movies? Where is he on the scale of evaluation as regards reading 19th century English literature? You see, there could be thousands and thousands of these things. He is somewhere on this scale for all those things. Now, if you ask him about something that he doesn't know anything about, then he's just neutral.
Yeah. Lands in the middle there.
Yeah, he's at 4, which means he's actually on the scale without realizing it. Now, let's look at the dotted vertical line on the right, which goes from love at the top to hate on the bottom. Okay? So love is what we see in avidity. When someone is avid of something, we say he loves it. So you say, oh yeah, this guy is a hockey lover, right? He has season tickets, goes to all the games. He's avid about hockey. Okay, he loves it. And at the other end of the scale, we have hate, which is a synonym for loathing. He condemns it. Doesn't want to have anything to do with it, says it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So let's go through these. Condemnation. This is not a good place to be. Doesn't matter what the subject matter is. When you loathe something, you condemn it.
Yeah.
Like these murders that happened in Israel a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
These people showed up, murdered, I think it was something like 1,400 Israelis were murdered.
Yeah. For a bunch of children.
Yeah, women and children, old people, right? Okay, so most people condemn that, right? They loathe that. They hate it, right? That's where they are on the scale. Now, you can say, well, that's not a nice place to be. Well, how else are you going to respond to something like that? You see? Notice, I'm not saying anything here about sane and insane. I'm just saying this is how you evaluate it. Okay, so let's go up to the next level up is invalidation. Invalidation is refutation. This is like the person that says, you Republicans are selfish, you're cruel, you're mean, and you're wrong about everything, right? This person is invalidating Republicans.
Yeah.
So he is refuting what they say or what they aver. Okay? So he's not necessarily condemning them. He doesn't want to kill them all. He just invalidates them, which is not quite as bad.
Yeah.
Up from that is discouragement. Discouragement is what you do with something when you disagree with it. Right? So your daughter's going out with some guy who does drugs. You discourage it. You say, you can get into a lot of trouble hanging out with a guy who uses drugs. It's against the law. He could get arrested and you can get arrested with him.
Yeah.
So I disagree with this choice. There's 1,000 guys in your high school go out with somebody else. You see? You're discouraging it. Up from that is neutrality, which is self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to realize that neutrality is a type of equilibrium. You don't really experience it that way when you first come to it because you don't know that it exists.
Yeah.
But it is certainly an impartiality. Like if somebody asked me who do I want to win the World Series, I don't even know who's in the World Series.
Right.
Okay? So clearly I'm impartial. So you have to realize that in science, it's well understood that states of equilibrium are inherently unstable. Any state of equilibrium that exists is not going to exist for long.
Yeah.
It's going to tilt one way or the other. So you realize that people rarely stay neutral. Now, let's say you have a judge, right? You want the judge to be neutral. You want him to be impartial. You want this judge to be in a frame of mind where, okay, this is the defendant, he's got his lawyer. This is the plaintiff, he's got his lawyer. I'm going to listen to the evidence, right? He doesn't bring any baggage with him. He looks at the law, he looks at the facts, and he applies it impartially. That's what we want, right?
Yeah.
So that's a place where neutrality is of benefit. We want him to be neutral. So when the judge hates one side or the other, he is departed from neutrality.
Yeah.
So you don't want the judge to be best buddies with one of the attorneys. Hey, Joe, how are you? How are the kids? Oh, why don't you come over for a beer on Saturday?
All right.
That's not a good sign. Now, that may have existed as a fact, but it should not be even shown in the court.
True.
The judge just be neutral.
Yeah. Justice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Counselor, make your opening statement, right? That's all he says.
Yep.
Okay. So now let's go up to acceptance. Acceptance is condoning. When you accept something, you condone something. So we see this often in politics where they expect someone to reject something. Like, for example, this business going on in the Middle East. Most of the people in the American Congress do not accept that behavior, killing women and children.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't condone it. So this is why you'll see a guy saying, we want you to condemn this, do you condemn this anti-Semitism? You see? And if you're smart, you say, yes, I condemn it. Because if you don't, they say you're condoning it.
Yeah.
Which is correct. Up from that is unanimity. Now, unanimity means literally one mind and it's agreement. So when you are in agreement with something, so you say you have a guy and he becomes a libertarian, and this guy is now a full-throated libertarian. He's unanimous. Everything they say, he agrees with. Okay? He's at level 2, unanimity. And then up at 1, you have encouragement. Encouragement is what you get from a person who's avid. A person who's avid will encourage it. Like if you bump into somebody who was on Weight Watchers and lost 100 pounds, he'll say to you, "Oh, yeah, you got to try this. It works, you know." And see, he's an avid proponent of Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
He's encouraging you to do it. So you can say he's a lover of Weight Watchers.
Mm.
So on an emotional level, this manifests as love and hate at the top and at the bottom.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No. That's yeah, that definitely makes sense.
So this is extremely useful in deciding what persons you want to surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're a Christian, right? It doesn't come up in the conversation. And you hear some guy who is invalidating Christianity.
Yeah.
You really want to become friends with this guy? Because when he finds out you're a Christian, he's going to attack you.
Yeah.
So it's sort of and the opposite also is true, where somebody's at the top of the scale. You see somebody who speaks well of Christianity. He doesn't know you're a Christian, but he's speaking well of it. He's encouraging it. He may not even be a Christian himself. There's a famous Jewish pundit who speaks very well of Christian people. So he's been around enough of them to see that they're kind, they're forgiving, they're generous, they're moral, And so even though he has a different faith, he is encouraging of
Yeah.
this.
Huh. Yeah.
So since we're wrapping this up, let me just say in closing, the data in this book are vital for every person and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm explaining things that 99% of the people have no clue about. Okay? And by explaining it, you can look at it and say, "Oh, yeah, I see what's going on here." See? And that facilitates your progress because you know who to be around and who to avoid. You know what
Yeah.
path to follow.
Especially for those out there who are, students of human behavior, people who like to people watch and try to study people and might end up being those, students out there that might think on, how can I study the human behavior, get into psychology or, certain things and stuff like that.
Right.
It's good to not necessarily get to know strangers, but you can get to learn human behavior in another way.
You can get to know strangers just as easily.
Yeah.
I bump into people all the time. Sometimes for 5 or 10 minutes, I spot them
Yeah.
because people tell you their levels. It
Yeah.
comes right out of the guy's mouth,
Hmm.
you know?
And it
Like you're in the locker room, right? And
yeah.
getting ready to swim, and the guy next to you says, "Yeah, all women are the same." Hello, that guy's at identity
Yeah.
regarding women. That's a low level of thought. Okay, you don't want to introduce this guy to your sister.
Oh no.
You see, you don't even know his name, but right there, he's disqualified
Hmm.
because he
Exactly.
says an identity. Because
Absolutely.
smart people don't do that. A smart guy says, "Well, yeah, some women are like that, but some aren't." He sees what's in front of his face.
Yeah. At the same time, too, this can help. It'll help you pick out the people you definitely want to stay away from,
Yes,
and recognize the dangers in people beforehand.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is why I can absolutely guarantee if you study this book, it will save you from catastrophes,
Yeah.
dilemmas,
Predators.
bankruptcies, indictments, divorces, fist fights. All right, all kinds of bad things can be forestalled by knowing this data because you see the guy coming.
Mm-hmm.
You see what this guy is about, and you just say, I'm not going to mess with this guy.
Yeah.
Okay? Have a nice day. Goodbye. You don't have to make a crusade of it. You don't have to say anything, but
Mm-hmm.
this is not somebody I want to invite to a party at my house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me throw up your website there, too. So for those who want to pick up the book, before we continue to part 4. Part 4, we left off on chapter 7 today, and we will pick up on chapter 8 the next time. So if you don't have the book yet, go to septemics.com and pick up Septemics.
Yes, and I want to say to your viewers that I invite you to the website because you can see what many readers have said about this,
Yeah.
what many journalists have written about this, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself, and you can listen to a pre-recorded introduction to Septemics, which explains to a new person in 15 minutes what this is.
Yeah. Cool. Heck yeah. Jim, thank you again.
Thank you, Paul.
For
It was a
sharing some of
pleasure.
this data. Awesome.
Okay.
So we will see you next time. And yeah.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Seance. And until we will see you on part 4. Talk to you later.